as I said, Shyla has 20 years of experience in palliative care nursing in Australia and overseas. She has a Master's of Palliative Care and a Master's of Public Health and a wealth of knowledge to share. And she's going to talk to us about aged care in Queensland, I understand. Shyla is a strong contributor to the Palliative Care Network nationally. This week, there was a Palliative Care Queensland election campaign in conjunction with the AMA, and maybe I won't steal your thunder, you can tell us what's happening there. So thank you, Shyla.
Hi everyone, thanks for having me. I'm actually down here to visit my dad, so it's quite nice to actually come and say hi to everyone. Just come from Victor, so it's a bit warmer up here, which is lovely. But I am Adelaidean, so you guys can probably understand me a bit more than my people in Queensland can. So Mark kindly asked if I could jump in, and the former topic was on aged care. Now, I don't think Sarah is online, but if she would have a bit of a giggle if she heard that I was talking on that, because she was actually my mentor. I was paediatric palliative care with her down here, but I have gone on and done adults, and I was done with an aged care for a little while as well in Canberra. So I can give a bit of a space, talk about what we've been doing in that space, but then Greg mentioned advocacy as well. So I can really talk about whatever you need, whatever you want to talk about. Obviously there is an election happening up in Queensland at the moment, and we're in caretaker mode. 31st, Halloween is the date. And yeah, we've been doing an election campaign. We've had an inquiry, so we're kind of saying the stars have aligned in Queensland. So got VAD on the agenda. We've had a palliative care inquiry. We've had a service review of palliative care services. All of this has just demonstrated the gaps, or significant gaps in palliative care. And we've worked with AMA and the clinical directors of palliative care to demonstrate what is actually needed. And what is needed is $275 million per year new funding for palliative care in Queensland. And unfortunately, although it was lovely to see Labor make a commitment on Friday, it was, Sunday actually, it was 171 million. So we're all, it's not enough, but it's okay. And then we heard it was over 6 years. So it's nowhere near enough. We are delighted to see we're on the agenda, but we're just sort of saying it's starting the conversation and we want a bit more. So now we're doing a bit tic-tacking with the two parties, or all the parties, but particularly those two, to see what we can get next. But there's a bit more to go, unfortunately. But anyway, we are on the radar, which is great. Unfortunately, also at the same time, Labor talked about that. We have been strictly trying to split the issues a bit, because our, it's nothing different to everyone here, but really, VAD is 1% of the population, palliative care is 100% of the population. You can't have VAD without palliative care, you can have palliative care without VAD. So there's a lot of these things that we talk about quite openly in that space. I do have a little presentation about aged care, which, yeah, thank you. To go through, mainly about what we've been doing in that space, but also if there's anything else you want me to particularly focus on, I'm happy to talk about anything. I have a few documents that I can leave here as well. So engagement, this is what Mark and, we're not a clinical service, so we're like you guys, because we don't have PEPA as part of us. So Palliative Care Queensland essentially is a peak body, but we have moved into project funding recently, and that's sort of how we've managed to increase our funding. So I can say 3.5 years ago when I started in the role, we were 1 FTE or less than that. I started as 0.8, was run in my garage, and I had a part-time admin. Now we have been very fortunate in discussions and funding, and we now have 19 FTE staff, 3 offices, and multiple projects, but mainly through PHM funding. It's actually how we've managed to achieve that. Okay, so we'll go through. I should also mention that funding often runs out. It's only 12 months every year, so every year we battle for the next round. So like we said, just to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land where we meet today, and thank you for already doing that. The other thing that PCQ does is sets who we are at the beginning of every meeting that we do. So we always say that the way we care for our dying is a significant indicator of the kind of society we are, and that our organisational priorities are that all Queenslanders are able to live every day until their last, are able to have a dignified death regardless of illness, age, culture or location, and have access to a supportive social network at the end phase of life, and have the choice of quality palliative care. And even after, you know, I'm preaching to the converted here, but we've worked in this sector for so long, people just do not know what palliative care is and what we do. So we find that really essential to bring that at every meeting. The other thing, as Greg mentioned, I've got a master's in public health, so very interested in public health palliative care and that upstream approach to palliative care. And you can see that kind of is very integrated into the way we operate in PCQ. And I do actually have 2 staff with public health masters as well. So we're very keen in this approach. And we do a lot of work with Public Health Palliative Care International. And we actually are secretariat for the ANZ chapter for them as well. So we link a lot with Julian Abel and the teams overseas around that. So this is one of Julian's and Alan's work around palliative care essentials. And we use this quite a lot to look at how we as a peak body need to work with the different groups. And it's not just the health models. So I don't know, most people have probably seen this around the place, but this is quite critical to what we do. So we work with specialists, we work with generalists, we work with the community around compassionate communities models, and we work with local councils. We're about to, just a little sneak peek, in December, launch a Townsville area palliative care plan. And we think we might be the first group to ever do this on the strategic planning, to have 7 LGAs sign up to it. So 7 mayors have actually said, I'm going to commit to the next 4 years to be a part of this plan. So it's really great. I thought about, well, what do we do in this space in aged care? So we looked at sector conversations. So we talked to our sector, obviously, that's the key thing of a collective of a peak body. We look at awareness raising initiatives and resources. We do lots of community conversations and consultation. And we do programs and projects in the space. So I'll quickly walk you through some of those. So sector conversations. So this is probably our big thing from our policy space. We do what we started 2 years ago. So we have annual roundtables or an annual summit. We've just been organising that all day today, actually. So basically what we do is we normally do it at the Brisbane Convention Centre. This year it's going to be a bit different. But basically we have a sector update. So we get Commonwealth and state and all the peak bodies to give an update of what they do in this space and what's their priorities for the next 12 months. What have they been doing and what are they doing in the next 12 months? So we get PCNA, AMSPAN, PACCAMS, there's so many abbreviations in the space, and now the social workers, we'll be getting them this year. So all of the different groups, and we look at what's the Commonwealth priorities, and we ask the national groups to tell us what are you doing in Queensland. So not just what are you doing across Australia, but what are you doing that's relevant to us. And then we do the same at the state level and ask everyone to tell what's happening at the state. And then after that, we have roundtables on topics that are relevant. So we have 6 roundtables. And then from that, we develop an annual priorities document. And this is the basis of all of our submissions to government and everything that we do, and submissions to Palliative Care Australia as well. So we do an aged care roundtable every year as part of this. So that's part of, and I'll be leaving all these for you, so less baggage for them. So this is a summary of what we did last year. So we basically look at what are the priorities that come up, and we have 6 priorities, which you can see there. And then jump to the next page. We also develop what the round tables are. So these are the round tables, and we take notes and we put this in the back of the report around what actually came out of those round tables. So that if someone asks us to talk on aged care, we go to that one and particularly look at what came out of that round table. And you can see all the different round tables that we do. So it's quite handy actually as a policy approach for the organisation. So that's our policy area. Community conversations. So like I said, this is a big thing that we're really passionate about in this space. We've got 3 different ways. I just thought I'd give a bit of a summary. Compassionate community conversation series. So we did this huge booklet here. Essentially, we've got some funding from Age Friendly Queensland. Now, do you have Age Friendly South Australia? I don't know if you have that down here. I didn't look actually. This is a World Health model for age friendly. It's a structure that they have in place. Now, Queensland government is technically age friendly. Now, you'd think age friendly might have something about death, dying, loss, or grief. No, nothing in a World Health model in this space. So it was quite interesting. We do believe we set a precedent for actually getting some funding in relation to palliative care out of that money, which is great. Essentially, up to the next one, it was quite a busy year. We ran around across Queensland to 15 locations, including the Torres, and held round tables or community morning teas is what we called them. We did it in partnership with Queensland Carers for Consumers, and we work really closely with those three bodies nowadays. We had over 500 people attend, 15 different events, and 444 gave feedback. So it's quite a good mechanism. We are not a research body. Let me just put that out there for all the academics. My husband's an academic, and I always just say that's not our job. What we do is have conversations, and we record back what people tell us in that space. So these were for health professionals and consumers and just anyone that wanted to have a chat in this space. So we did two little interesting findings out of this, I guess, that I just always like to talk to people about. And again, nothing we don't know, but it's quite nice to see it on paper. So we asked people, are current supports and services meeting Queenslanders' needs? So only 52% said yes, that medical and other needs are being met. Only 52%, that should be 100%. So that's not great, but we looked at the World Health definition. We looked at social, only 33% said they were being met. Only 29 for cultural and spiritual, and only 23 for emotional. So this has enabled us to say to the government that we need more focusing, not just in medical, we need to look at social, emotional and spiritual. And we have managed to use this to get extra funding. And so we now have a COVID project around spirituality and bereavement happening across the state. And this was sort of helped us to get that. The other interesting question was, we asked Queenslanders, where do you look for information about loss, dying and grief, or loss, aging, dying and grief? We use that term to sort of define palliative care. It's a bit easy. And where most of our funding, how many people go to GPs and do another brochure at the GPs and put another one there in their waiting room? That's usually our strategy for everything that we do in the space. Now that was number 6. So most people, again, this is not research, this is just what they told us. The first one was community groups and community organisations, then their friends and neighbours, and then someone they know that's experienced them, Dr. Google, health website, and then GPs. So this just enabled us to say, you know, maybe we need to think differently how we have these conversations. Should we be talking to community groups and Rotaries and everyone in that space, church groups, and ask them, you know, how do you tell people, how do you signpost them to supports and services? So again, that's how we've enabled us to get some other project funding as well. The other thing we've done is some other consultations. So I've just given you some examples here. So we worked with, again, with the 4 groups, and we call ourselves the Queensland Compassionate Communities Peaks Network. And at the moment for COVID, we're meeting weekly, and we've just done an engagement plan for Queensland Health on how to engage with families, how to communicate and engage with families from RACS when there's a COVID outbreak in your facility. So it was great to lead that from our side. So we went around again talking to everyone in that space, and that was actually led by Health Consumers Queensland, that consultation summary. The other thing that we do is kitchen table discussions. I don't know if anyone's heard of this, but it's a great mechanism. And it's basically, it's consumer-led conversations. So we're getting further deeper into the consumer space, and not just the professional consumers, but we ask consumers to then have a kitchen table discussion. Most of them have it in the park or somewhere, and ask their friends and family, what does this mean? And so they're great reports that we've been getting back in that space. And I think we've done it with about 300 people so far, so quite a few. And these are sort of what they look like. Obviously, it's all on our website, but I won't go through the detail. But then we produce it in user-friendly reports and on our website and put it on social media, and we get the 4 organisations to share it. So we're kind of telling the story. And the groups all tell us that they love the fact that they are getting their voice to decision makers. So that is a huge thing for consumers. So it's a really lovely thing to be a part of. All right, awareness raising stuff that we're doing in resources. Just jump one more. We did this campaign in National Park Care Week, and this is our new thing that we're rolling out for the next few years. Again, we all know the World Health definition of palliative care, but what does that mean for the individual? So we went really simply, and we have this campaign. And again, like I said, our summit report gives us our policy area. This gives us the baseline for all of our comms that we do. And we try to align, even our election campaign, we've aligned to this. So a human right is critical in that. So they're really simple languages, and we've actually made this a banner so that services can put it up in their service as well. And I think you guys actually use the National Park Care Week, the right one. Yeah. So lovely working with you guys so much. Next one. And this one I just thought I'd throw in because you guys are actually about to do this as well. So we just launched this the other day, our palliative caring resource for National Carers Week. And what's happened is Palliative Care Australia is supporting all of us across the country to localise this resource, and it's a fabulous resource. We actually added a couple of pages on compassionate communities into it, but we can't take the credit, it's actually WA's resource, but it's a great little toolkit and it's one of the best consumer or carers booklets that there is, which is great. Okay, a couple of projects, everyone loves a project. I'm going to jump onto this one, Pally Chat. So Pally Chat we just launched in June or July, and this is with Brisbane South. The problem is that it's only in one district and everyone else wants it. That's our biggest challenge. It's based on Julian Abel's work in Mend It. I don't know if anyone knows the Mend It project in the UK, but essentially it's about working with community to empower them to have the answers, is the space. If you jump one more, I think I've explained it a bit better here. We have Pally Wellbeing Connectors and Pally Community Connectors. So we call Pally Wellbeing Connectors our health or social counsellors within the team. And then community connectors are community groups. We all have community connectors. We have neighbours that do this. We've just added the Pally in there. So we tell them you're already connected with your friends and family. How do you connect them in the palliative care space? Our key thing of this project is about four elements. So we look at who is in your support network, how do you ask them for help, how do you accept help, and then if none of that works, then we provide them signposting to a new one. Now, most of our directory services go the opposite, or navigation services. First thing we do is tell you a new service. We're flipping that around and saying, no, the first thing is who is already there and how do you work with them before we add another one into the mix. So part of it could be, how do you talk to your GP? Your GP's already offered you that support. Well, did you actually accept it? No, maybe you could accept it now, so encouraging those conversations. So that's a bit of a brief about that project. That's a little bit more. The other thing we're doing is training and networks, and we're developing these Pally community connectors, training them up and then asking them to link to the health service. So the health services know who their community people are that are passionate in this space. Last Aid, just a quick overview. Last Aid is a community, or another international project that we brought to Australia. We just launched it last month. And it's a standardised 4-hour community training. Best name ever, if you ask me. First aid, last aid. Jump to the next one. You guys can do this. It's not, we're only doing it in Queensland. So last aid, it's a 4-hour international standardised introductory level training. And we say, you'll be a last aider. And we're actually wanting to get to the point where we say to all organisations, you have a first aider in your office? Where's your last aider? So it's a really logical thing. Topics are great. Dying is a normal part of life, planning ahead, relieving suffering, and finding goodbyes. It is a baseline level. Now, the challenge is all aged care staff want to do it, and we say, no, that's Pepper and everything else. There's plenty there. This is community. And it's a really great course in that space, which is really exciting. Last day. And then ambulance wish. This is like our little baby that everyone loves. And again, this is available for you guys as well. I've just got a video quickly to show it. It's only a couple of minutes, but it just is too precious not to. I'll see if it works. I don't know. Is that going to work? I should have warned you after this video, but if you click on her, it should work. Yeah. I can send you the link. No, that's all right. So essentially, again, this is an international program that came to us. It founded in the Netherlands. The government gave us a decommissioned ambulance and said, go for this. We, like you guys, are not a clinical service. We launched this with the health minister in July last year with Betty. Betty wanted an ice cream, passion fruit ice cream, and to go to the Botanic Gardens. Just to note, passion fruit ice cream is not easy to get. So we brought it to there and we had the media there. 150 million reach online. Articles in 20 languages. We were on Sunrise, I can't remember the shows, Today Show, all of them. We've got BBC wanting to follow us now. And to be honest, we did this because we love the concept of it. But what the minister said to us recently was, this is the best community awareness campaign of palliative care that I've ever seen. And we hadn't thought about that, but that's kind of the side effect, and it is. People are willing to talk about this. people are not willing to talk about palliative care. And we always say that all that palliative care is what's important to you, what are your wishes, what are your goals, and how do we activate a support network around you to make that happen. That's all this is, and that's all we do anyway. So it's a great conversation starter in the space. And I think that was everything. That's a quick 101 of who we are and what we do. So,
sorry, how does the ambulance, I didn't quite catch how the ambulance?
What it does? Oh, sorry. So yeah, basically, if you're in a specialist palliative care service, you can refer to us. They will take you on your last wish. So if you're it's about a mobility issue. So you've got to be palliative and you've got to have a mobility issue. And then we'll take you with volunteer paramedics, and the specialist service provides a clinical escort, and we take you on your last wish.
Wow.
How far will you go?
100 k's from Brisbane. We just got an announcement. So we saw the minister last week. This was part of the funding announcement. Because it's a great way to get them involved. They love it. It's obviously a great conversation. So we got him involved, and he did announce some extra funding for us for the next. And we are scoping now across the state, which would be great.
I'm in your political advocacy campaign. So what have you done? What have you, apart from all these
So
things?
Fräulein, what have you done? Yes, for advocacy.
Just in my spare time. That means a lot coming from you. Thanks. We were on the PCNA committee for a long time together. So for advocacy, so we have a team which we call our policy, strategy and social impact team. And for the election, is that particularly what you want to know about? Yeah. So for this election, the biggest thing that we did, and everyone's got different issues, what's happening. The biggest problem in Queensland is the fact that it's very siloed. So we had an inquiry back in 2013, 62 recommendations, one actually done, and that was Hummingbird House, a paediatric hospice. Nothing else actually done. Then we've had now another, 2020, we've had another inquiry, same issues. The sector's bored. We're over submitting documents and actually being starving in the space. And there's a lot of infighting because everyone's just desperate for money. They're just, I always say to them, they're like starving children. Anytime you give a little bit of money, everyone's just trying to survive. We've got no time for real quality improvement, anything like that, because we're just stuck service delivering as much as we can. So we tell the government that regularly, lots of discussions. And then really what we did is got all of the sector to be a collective voice. So that was the big thing. We got them all to agree that this is what we want, this is what it looks like. And then we've come forward saying this is a united front. This is what everyone agrees, and we're all singing from the same hymn book on the space. And everyone is working on that. Now we're giving all of our members talking points on the election campaign so they can push it. We did an election launch last week, and announcing this, we had AMA, we had a Liberal, a Labor and a Greens there, and we asked them all, what are you going to do in this space? You all know that this is gap. So no one can argue healthcare is not a problem, or not a underfunded, but it's actually what are you going to do about it? And we can't have another 2013 with nothing happen out of this space. The other big thing is working with our friends, our key group. So we're only a little group like you guys. We're only palliative care, out of this. So our strength is Quota Queensland, health consumers, carers, AMA, the nurses, all of them. The other thing we did in the bad space is worked on both sides there. So the antis, we're very friendly with them, and we say, don't go on the death and die, all this negative about that. Go on care first. So the Catholics and the Anglicans have a massive thing on care first. The Dying with Dignity, I regularly give talks with them. And I've said to them, you cannot have this without us. So therefore they'll push, you need better palliative care, they're underfunded. So we're just in the middle. We keep saying we can exist either way and we will manage it either way. But the problem at the moment is us, and that we don't have enough funding to keep going. That is 1%, this is 100%. And then I guess the other fun thing that we did with the 275 million, when we costed that out, we thought, oh, that doesn't sound good in COVID. But what we actually said is that's the equivalent to 1 cup of coffee per Queenslander a month. That's all. So getting it into language like that helps.
Yes, I just wonder where the KPMG report came in to your advocacy process.
So
whether it was,
yep.
Questions about the KPMG report, which is a recent report about the economic benefits of palliative care.
So we actually haven't used that much because we've had a bit of, it's been a little bit challenging on translating it to Queensland. It's very New South Wales centric. So that has been our challenge in the space. So we are working with Palliative Care Australia because they're working on the next version of it to look at how we can get some of our costings in there to keep it very relevant to Queensland. We definitely say it's a great tool to demonstrate a need, but what people need locally is to say, how does that look in a, we're very decentralised. It's a little bit like here, we're big states, lots of regional areas. We've got lots of different cold communities and Indigenous communities. It's not one size fits all.
no.
New South Wales is a lot better funded than Queensland is, and we say that regularly, but around that sort of thing. So we do definitely use it to demonstrate, but a bit like any evidence. We say, this is needed, but what does that mean for Queensland? And we don't have data, information.
We're grappling with it.
Yeah, it is challenging, and I know Mark and I talk regularly about things like this. So.
Can I ask whether you have any more luck in at least starting conversations when you're talking about the regions or with country health, or can you give me a bit of a large city, smaller place?
Yeah. So Queensland's very southeast centric. I've also had to adapt to how Queensland operates. And we were successful. It's kind of, like I said, the stars have aligned. We've been quite lucky in a few of the approaches. We've got some really good bureaucrats in Queensland Health. One of the senior ones, his mum was a hospice nurse in New Zealand, so we utilise that quite a bit in the space. So it's relationships. It's all relationships. Yes, there you go. So we've got to utilise these things. So we had CARS funding last year, Care in the Right Setting. So CARES, but Care in the Right Setting is what it is. And basically that's funded 3 things for a year and a half, which again runs out next year. And so, it's that sustainability that's a problem. The big thing is a Pally Consult. So a centralised phone line. It's run out of Brisbane, but it provides 24-hour consultant, and there's a nurse line as well. So medical and nurse line for any primary palliative care. So all aged care can ring that 24 hours a day. They also run this, what they call Sparta. Everyone loves some abbreviation. I don't even know what Sparta stands for, but it's basically a hub and spoke model across the state now that has a specialist team that runs education and also support into the primary care space. And they're across in hub and spokes. I really like that because I'm really into localised versions, and we need to upskill the teams and keep them local rather than a centralised model. So that's sort of what we push in the space.
And just a comment, perhaps you could have a little donate button on the light ambulance for an area near you.
Actually, definitely, yeah.
Credit card, like that.
I like that. Well, Harvey Bay actually were what we say inspired us. So, the picture of the Harvey Bay with them stopping, the paramedics stopping at the beach, taking that photo. So that helped, really starting it. So we are desperate now to say we need one in Harvey Bay, we need one in Townsville. The other fun thing we've done is actually linked with Angel Flight. You guys have here.
Yes.
This is you can do this. We can actually start this. They have all these airplanes and they have pilots willing to do anything. They have compassion flights that will bring family from regional areas to the metro area to say goodbye. And they told me the other day that they would bring cattle dogs too. So you do that and tell me Sunrise won't come here and tell a story around that. So we call them wishes to you. You guys could do that now. So we could bring wishes to people as well. So it's kind of thinking out of the square to show what we do, but in a way the community is happy to approach it. But it's it's kind of a different way to do things.
Nick, did you have that?
Yeah, I was intrigued by the idea of the council palliative care plan. I know the council's been hearing that are enormous, but is there any more insights you can give us into what goes into one of those?
So it's not a council plan, it's the strategic plan for the whole of the Townsville region, which includes like Palmer, it covers 5 LGAs, that hospital and health region. And we've made it about what is important for palliative care. So what's the 4-year plan for palliative care here? And then we went to all the LGAs and the hospital and health service and primary health network. And we said, and TARS, which is the Indigenous group as well. And we just said, these are the directions. Do you agree with these? And they all said yes. And we said, you guys are more than roads, rates and rubbish. You are about compassionate neighbours. This is about building a compassionate community. Your population is ageing. How are you going to be a part of this space? And they all totally signed up for it. And they've now committed a staff member for a working group for the next 4 years, all of them, to be a part of it. And, you know, everyone loves a media opportunity, so you get them all together to take a photo and you tell them that it's going to be special and they like that too.
Excellent. So last question, Lucia.
I was just interested a little bit more around your community connectors and community wellbeing. How do you really connect and engage with communities? Is it mainly through Health Consumer or other pathways and other organisations?
It's often through community groups. So we do community asset mapping. We work with La Trobe University in their healthy end of life planning, I think their program is. And we work with them on their models. So they have a community asset mapping model. You do that first, and you understand who are the community groups that are doing this, who are your formal and who are your informal. Your informal ones are who most people don't know about. So once you do them, and this is all not rocket science, this is sort of something that everyone else does. We just often don't do it in Power Care. So we do community asset mapping, then we go and talk to them all and say, well, what are you doing in this space? They normally have an advocate that is quite passionate or has a story to tell. Then you link with that person and you understand what their role is. They then become your advocate in the space. And we just work with them. They then get their friends to link up. And it's kind of just, it rolls out very naturally when it's a real co-design, I guess is what I'd say in the space. It's once they see this is not us as a health service coming in to say, you know, you're going to, everyone come to me for your care. It's actually you're empowered to make a big difference in this space. So it's not just the medical, it's the social and emotional that can be provided here too. It's sort of an idea. Thank you.
So I'd really like to thank Shyla for coming all this way. So Shyla, thank you very much for coming. I'm sure you all registered that she said it's been a busy year. But I suspect that every year for Shyla is a busy year. But I think you've given us lots to think about and lots to challenge us. And I think the thing that stood out for me was that you ride on the shoulders of other giants and you make other people do the work for you almost. And so we don't need to be trudging along at the bottom, but we need to be on the top and making all these other people run for us, really. And so thank you very much for coming. All the best. I need to say that Shyla will be back in 2 weeks' time and she's doing some more work for us and talking about compassionate communities. And in traditional South Australian hospitality, we can't let you go without some quality of life products.
See the Hagues or what?
You guessed, Hagues and wine.